John writes in from Nashville, Tennessee. He goes, "Hello, Joe and Big Al. I have written in before and found your discussion in Insight very valuable. So here we go again. Drink of choice is cold brew coffee. Pet is Cavapoo. Cavapoo, right?
We've had those before, yeah.
Yeah.
Cavapoo is a popular dog on this show, apparently.
Yeah. That's why you know how to pronounce it. We've had it before.
And he drives a Tesla. Now down to business. Okay, I have an opportunity, an opti. I like how people just like to what opti? Have you ever wrote opti? I have an opti.
No, they're trying to mess you up, Joe. On purpose.
No, it's an opportunity to participate in a deferred comp program through my employer, and I can contribute as much as my salary and bonus as I want, which proceeds to be paid out evenly over 10 years following my separation from employer. So deferred comp plan. These deferrals can be invested as I wish, as the same as my 401k options. Good diversification, low cost. I'm 48, plan to retire 55. The plan provides a 1.5% match on what I contribute, but the contributions don't count toward my 401k eligibility earnings. So I miss out on about 5% of employer contributions if I defer enough income that I don't max out 401k eligible contribution max. So in effect, I'm losing out at 3.5% on that amount. This year, I'll lose 3.5% or 50K or so, roughly on 50K. So $1,700. In exchange for that, I'm keeping 100K of income under the 32% tax bracket. So it feels like an okay trade-off. So what he's saying is that there's additional match and there's maximum contribution limits and eligibilities. And he didn't even have to put that paragraph in, just FYI. Irrelevant. His salary and bonus is roughly $350,000 annually, and all of that is eligible for the deferred comp. I also receive $75,000 annually in stock awards, as well as 90-ish in investment income. So my gross taxable income will roughly be $165,000, even if I choose to defer all of my salary and bonus, which I can't do. I will take at least enough income to cover the 401k max contribution, other tax deferred paycheck items like medical insurance, HSA contributions, etc. For 2022, I decided to defer roughly $100,000. And with other pre-tax deductions, standard deductions, etc., I am projecting taxable income of right at $340,000, which was purposeful to stay out of the 32% tax bracket. As I look forward to next year, I have to make the deferral election by June 15. I'm wondering if maybe I should defer even more. Asset picture is as follows. Paid for house at $2.5 million, which I plan to downsize and around retirement, likely freeing up $1 million or so. Tax deferred balances are roughly 1.5. Roth balance 260. Brokerage account at $3.7 million. Total liquid is 5.5. Over allocation is 70% equities. I love the idea of deferring taxes, but I stick to that deferral amount that I used this year. That will yield a total deferred balance of $1 million-ish when I retire, or $100,000 over the next 10 years, plus maybe $100,000 in investment income. So that would be about $200,000 a year in income at retirement. Deferring more now will only drive that income up more. So I'm struggling with whether that makes sense in my situation. Would love to hear your perspective on the issue and related items that you think I should consider as I make deferral decisions. Thanks for your help.
And now you got about a minute to answer.
That was mouthful. It was very long.
It was. It spanned over 3 pages.
You could have just shortened that thing out. I have a deferred comp plan. I can defer all of my income. Should I do it? Because the pitfall is if I defer it, I don't pay tax now, but I'm going to have to pay tax later. And the problem with deferred comp plans is that you have to elect how you want to receive that income before you make the election to defer. And so he's electing to defer a 10-year payment out on the deferred comp payment once he retires.
Here's what I think. He's currently 48. He's going to retire at 55. If he has a 10-year payout, it'll be 55 to 65. So his required minimum distribution date won't have hit yet. if the 100,000 is like the only income, that's a low enough bracket. He could actually do Roth conversions,
But
right?
he's
To the
talking about his investment income is $72,000.
yeah, sure. So
So
then maybe you can't. But I think the deferred comp, I don't have a problem with deferring it, especially if you save taxes. And because when you're going to get the money out, it's before you have to take your required minimum distributions. It's also before Social Security. My problem with deferred comp plans is you have to understand what they are. They are basically the company deferring some of your salary, and it's a company liability. It's not necessarily a separate account, although he does say it can be invested, which is different from most deferred comp plans. And so I'd have to know more about it. But I guess my point is, if it's a company liability instead of a separate account, then if the company goes bankrupt, you lose that money. That's how most deferred comp plans are. So I'd want to make sure. Well, first of all, if that's the case, what's the stability of the company? So you're basically saying you're going to get a payout in 7 years from now over 10 years, right? So you're basically thinking the company will be solvent for the next 17 years. And that's, to me, that's one of the problems with deferred comp plans.
that's the risk.
Yep, that's the risk. But I like the idea of saving in the 32% tax bracket. And I think he's got an opportunity to manage his tax brackets. I mean, if we look at 55 to 65, if that's right, 78,000 investment income, 100,000 deferred comp, that basically keeps, he actually still could do under current brackets, he could do a little Roth conversion. And then when he hits 65, he could do much bigger Roth conversions if he wanted to. Right. So that's how I would think about it. I'm not so worried about the future taxes. I think that can be managed because he's young enough, but I'd be worried about the safety of the plan.
I agree. Because he's worried about, well, I'm going to have $1 million or so in this deferred comp plan when I retire, but he's retiring at 55.
Right.
And so if I'm looking here, what does he think? He's going to have $100,000 withdrawal. And then plus he's going to have whatever investment income in his brokerage account.
Right.
Yeah, I think a couple of things that he might want to consider as well. Yeah, that's the biggest risk, right? If he's fine saying, you know what, I want to defer this, and he's really focused on the taxes, then you want to combine strategies in some instances, right? He's thinking, well, do I do more? Well, you might want to do more because he doesn't necessarily need to live off of any of that money. He said he could defer all the way up until the 401k contribution limits and some of the other HSA BS or whatever. So like 90% of his income, he could defer and not pay tax on. If he were to do that, the next step would be to do the conversions now at his young age, right? So he's reducing his income to a very low level historically, given his income history. And then from there, I would take the retirement accounts and convert, or his 401k, do an inter plan conversion. So let's say instead of deferring $100,000, he gets himself out of the 32% tax bracket. And so if he converts, or let's say if he defers another $100,000, now he's in the 24% tax bracket. Okay. So he's deferring another $100,000, but on the flip side, maybe he does a conversion of $100,000. So he's creating a deduction of $100,000, but he's also adding income of $100,000. So he's tax neutral. So he still stays in that 24% tax bracket, but essentially he got $100,000 in a Roth IRA virtually by paying no tax. But of course, you want to run the numbers out to see, all right, well, if he did $200,000 deferment, you know, what is that going to look like in that 10-year payment? And what other income sources is going to come in, or what hypothetically he thinks is going to come in from dividend or interest? But he can control that as well. In his brokerage account, he might be in like dividend paying stocks, or, I mean, that sounds pretty tax inefficient. I don't know how tax managed he is within that brokerage account. But getting $100,000 on $3 million, given today's environment, that kind of seems high. But
it does seem high. I love that idea, Joe, because now you're getting a lot of the Roth. You're getting a lot of the Roth converted now, still staying in a lower bracket. And when you get the deferred comp payout, well, then you're in a low bracket because you don't have a lot of other income. I think that's a great idea.
Right. So he's just going to live off the deferred comp. Hopefully, he can be a little bit more tax managed in the brokerage account. And then everything else, or a lot of the other dollars, the 401k dollars, he's converting out at 38, 39, 40, 41, or whatever, right? And then when he turns 55, I mean, then you start really maximizing wealth big time, because he's in a really awesome spot by being as young as he is and having the amount of wealth that he has. But he also has a deferred comp plan that most people don't have. That he could, kind of manipulate the overall income on the tax bracket and start maneuvering assets around that other people potentially cannot do because they don't have access to those types of plans. So, I mean, I would really take a hard look, but you're right, Al. The biggest risk that he has is to say, all right, well, is this company going to be around? And, what if they blow up, what really does this look like? What are the odds? I don't know. We don't know what the company is, but usually they're pretty large companies that have deferred comp plans.
Yeah, typically they are. We have had seen situations where larger companies have failed. So it's a concern. It's a risk.
Yeah, I totally agree. But if he's just strictly looking at taxes, there's a lot of cool things you potentially can do.
Are you prepared for retirement? Schedule a free financial assessment with an experienced financial professional right online at purefinancial.com.